Penn State just had a dominant victory against West Virginia, and fans should feel really good about where this team is headed.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Penn State wins 34-12. We'll talk about some overall takeaways here from the game and then specifically get into the offense and defense and answer the question, is Penn State an elite team based off of this game against West Virginia? This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're the nightcap on this Penn State recap. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. 5-Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation as well. And I want to answer it right out of the gate. Does this win by Penn State mean that they are in the upper echelon, that they can be in the same conversation as the elite premier teams? So we're talking Georgia, we're talking Ohio State. Not quite. Not quite just yet. But that doesn't mean that you can't be optimistic about the way that this team is built, because they are built to be just that. This is a college football playoff team, and they showed that today. There was a clear distance between themselves and West Virginia, who I tried to give some credit to. I was very convinced that Penn State was going to win this game no matter what. I never had a doubt in my mind that West Virginia could pull off an upset. Never thought that was going to happen, but there was still a major difference, and Penn State, I think, took a step further, and that was obvious based on the one and the biggest change that they made in the offseason. Sure, they went out and gotten three new coordinators. They ended up picking up some complementary pieces in the transfer portal to help out the depth chart. But Andy Kotelnicki paid dividends already, and you could see that on display. That is the biggest takeaway above all else, is that Penn State is in a good position to be in that conversation with a Georgia and Ohio State, be in the top, again, in the elite tier, but you have to beat Ohio State. That's how you do it. But Penn State is set up nicely to be able to do that. Because granted, this West Virginia team is not a college football playoff team. Anybody that put them in, that's just hopeless optimism. I think in this case, I think West Virginia is a competitive team, which is why I thought that they would cover the spread. I thought they would some garbage time in there, but I thought they'd be a little more competitive at home. But Penn State just took the wind out of their sails early on. The explosive plays were there. I mean, it was almost night and day compared to the 2023 season, between Mike Yurcich, who led this offense, ball control, which led to predictability, right? Just no explosiveness. And then it was too much explosiveness. I thought this was an interesting comment. James Franklin went into halftime and said that our drives are too short. Yeah, sure, we're scoring points, but we need to be able to sustain a drive. We need to be able to march the football down the field and give our defense a break. Well, they certainly got a lengthy break with that weather delay, but James Franklin was almost like, we're too explosive, guys. We need to find a way to dial it back. I think the offense is still brand new. And when Penn State was very, very sluggish to start the first quarter, I'm like, you know what? Anybody that was overreacting, that's fine. That's understandable. But from my point of view, it's easy to understand. This is a new complicated system. Okay, this isn't a preschool offense. For Penn State to adapt the way they did to Andy Kotelnicki's system that quickly, again, I feel like that was a positive, because 34 points, and I thought they would get to the 30s. I thought they would get to the 30s, and they did, but they let off the gas. If Penn State really needed to, they probably could have scored another touchdown or two to really, really widen the margin of victory there. So the biggest takeaway from this game is that Andy Kotelnicki's offensive system is working and it's only going to get better. If you think this was the best version of it, hey, 34 points, I can live with that. No, there's still room for improvement and they're going to get better. This was a preview of what's on the way in a sense. Drew Allar had an amazing game, and that's right, a result. That's a result of having a coach that gives you the opportunity to get in rhythm, that allows you to maximize your overall skill set and doesn't box you in. Drew Allar was boxed in a season ago by Mike Yurcich, right? And just by the offense in general. It was just boxed in, whoever, wide receivers, some offensive line blocking, and then scheme. But Andy Kotelnicki has done an excellent job to not only scheme those explosive plays open, but it allows Drew Allar you could just see a totally different Drew Allar on display. And I mean that from the actual X's and O's of it, in terms of him completing his throws, in terms of him taking down risky passes down the field, and he was still no interceptions. And then other than that botched snap, again, West Virginia clapping West Virginia players. Joel Klatt doesn't think so. The Fox broadcast didn't think so. But West Virginia defensive players were clapping, which forced, confused Dawkins and had him snap the football to Allar. But this offense is still keeping the game clean. Seriously, Drew Allar is so good at protecting the football, but he's also great at other things. The throw, power, arm strength, the accuracy, and something that was talked about on this show frequently. And honestly, maybe I didn't even give it enough justice. And I thought I was beating a dead horse at that point when talking about Drew Allar and that dual threat ability. The dude had 44 yards. West Virginia was chasing him around and they could not catch him. That is a 6'5" quarterback that ended up dropping some weight. He was 242 last season, ended up moving down to 235, and 7 pounds doesn't seem like a lot. But Drew Allar is, and James Frank, I kept saying, hey, James Frank, that Drew Allar was not a Lamar Jackson. You don't need to make that comparison. But James Franklin said it in the post-game presser that we call him Lamar Allar as a joke. But they truly do believe that he can be a dual threat quarterback and utilized, and West Virginia they couldn't bring him down. I don't know how you bring down that you don't bring down this quarterback that you believe that everybody out there believes is a statue, and they had trouble getting to him. So from the ability, making the throws, completing the passes, protecting the football, that's all well and great. But the defining moment came in the fourth quarter, folks, when Penn State's pouring it on. West Virginia's just completely out of it. They wanted to be done. Students left. I get it. The weather delay had an impact and everybody was kind of crammed to take shelter. I totally understand that. But that was a completely different second half. And Penn State's, pedal to the metal. Let's, put a stamp on this victory here. And Drew Allar, Josiah Trotter, somebody that was recruited by Penn State, the son of a former NFL linebacker, and Jeremiah Trotter. He's a good football player. Football is in his blood. And Drew Allar, a stiff arm right to the face of Trotter, put him in the turf. And that was and then gets up and lets Trotter know, like, I gotcha. Let him know that, the stiff arm was nasty. That Drew Allar, there was a timidness last year. Hesitation, second guessing. You can see it, just the eyeball test. You're never going to know the exact mindset of any sort of player, let alone Allar, right? What they're actually thinking and how they're processing the game unless they open up about it. But you can just tell, like, there's just a lot of second guessing here. Drew Allar looked confident, assured of himself. There was a swagger to him in this game, and he let West Virginia know there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of interesting discourse between Penn State and West Virginia fans online because, hey, you can have that discourse in the age of the internet and social media. But the bottom line is, I think Drew Allar saw a lot of those conversations and let West Virginia know that he's as good as advertised, or he's better than the way other people advertise him. And Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt said that that Drew Allar reminds them of Tom Brady. That's the highest praise when you have 7 Super Bowl rings. I don't know if I'll go. I don't know if I'll go that far just yet. He has elements of Tom Brady's game, elements of great quarterbacks, right? The arm strength, the accuracy, the decision making, and he's got that dual threat capability. The two biggest things from this game were that Penn State's offense really held the team back a season ago, and now it's kind of all equal. The offense can complement the defense. The defense can complement the offense. And that Drew Allar is that five-star quarterback that a lot of Penn State fans and a lot of other Penn State shows, including this one, knew that he could be. He was just held back in a lot of ways. So let's specifically break down Penn State's offense a little further and talk about the things that we saw, the dual threat ability of Drew Allar. Bo Prabula coming in the game frequently. Nicholas Singleton showing out again. Over 100 yards. The ground game was working. And then talk about the Penn State defense later on this show and look at some of the comments. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your number one ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to its peak performance. You got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into that MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Again, I want to welcome everybody to the live show here, the nightcap for this Penn State West Virginia recap. We'll start with Steven here, looking at the comment section. Again, thank you for joining the conversation. Both sides of the line look great. Did you pick up on how much Rucci played? So trying to pay attention, it's difficult to not follow the football and where the play is going. I did see Anthony Donko out there. Nolan Rucci did rotate in, so you did see a good rotation, but the line was pretty consistent with my expectations as far as Drew Shelton to Venga Ioane to Nick Dawkins to Sal Wormley to Anthony Donko. At least I saw him, and that's if for anybody that listened to Steve Jones on the broadcast, if you listen to the radio side of it, Voice of Penn State Football, he was on the show, did highlight the fact that starters don't really matter anymore. But I want to break that statement down. He didn't say that word for word, but implying that don't put as much stock into it, because for the way that Penn State operates, so many people play and they rotate in and they want to keep everybody fresh at their healthiest, high energy, that they just constantly rotate people in. So offensive line chemistry is very important, but a starting lineup, we're looking at, I've seen people that say, like, how is Julian Fleming not considered a starter? That's awful. That's terrible. How could you think that? And it's not meant to be offensive in any kind of way, right? On a given day, Julian Fleming, this is just an example, but Fleming might play more in a specific game than an Amari Evans based on the need, based on the matchup. So somebody might start, but it's almost like compared to a sixth man in basketball. You have your starting five, you have your starting 11, but there's somebody on the bench that actually might rotate in that gives you better playmaking ability on that given day, on that matchup. I like what Mish has to say. I think we go undefeated this year. The defense is the same and the offense got so much better. Penn State has the potential to do that. Penn State has the potential to go undefeated. I think that, and I've said this, now, my prediction was 10-2. That's kind of factoring in just circumstances that we don't see. Again, I think a USC team will be better down the road. I know Wisconsin got a scare, but going from Southern California then to Camp Randall, there's a bye weekend there. I understand, but that's still to go on those kinds of road games back to back like that, those kinds of environments. it's unprecedented in this case because of the new expanded Big Ten, the new conference realignment, the expanded playoff. It's unprecedented, but Penn State is well suited to go up against those challenges. Again, USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Washington all back to back to back to back. It is difficult, but Penn State is in an excellent position to approach the heart of the schedule like that. Kevin says, I agree. We dominated today. We are unrivaled. They absolutely dominated today. West Virginia checked out of that game very early. And then Kevin also adds, our defense is elite again. They're fast, physical, and the offense is much better. And the new OC already showed light years away from last year. We are unrivaled. And Kevin, to add to that, I feel like we didn't even see the best of the Penn State offense. I don't think this is the best version of the Penn State offense. Everybody healthy, everyone's clicking. Like they still have to get used to the power, the capability that they have in this group. Drew Allar only threw 17? I'll go to the box score real quick went 11 for 17. He threw 17 passes today, only 6 incompletions. Remember, a year ago he was 21 of 29. So almost fewer, half the passes, fewer of the passes compared to a season ago. Steven says, I think the secondary is better. The secondary is absolutely better, not only from a talent and a production standpoint, but from depth. There's a lot of depth in that cornerback room. You can play 3 safeties all at the same time. Zach Wheatley, KJ Winston, Jalen Reed had an amazing game. Another comment from Mish, the secondary last year was above average, but the defensive line and linebackers were elite. So that's just, I don't want to pick on the former secondary because Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, and Daquan Hardy were all NFL caliber players. They are. Johnny Dixon has health issues, but he's working his way back. But all of those guys, under the right circumstances, would have been drafted and made an NFL roster. But I'd also be lying to everybody if I said that secondary was elite or that they, again, at times I think they were a little overrated. I mean, Kalen King was supposed to be a first round pick. He ended up being picked in the 7th round by the Green Bay Packers, and he just made the practice squad. Just to kind of give an example, that secondary was good, but they weren't great. But this secondary, you have AJ Harris, who can be a Joey Porter Jr. type of player where he just takes away one side of the field. You have an Audavian Collins that can rotate in with a Cam Miller or a Jalen Kimber, right? It's not just 3 players, Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, Daquan Hardy, and that was kind of it. That was it. Penn State didn't really trust anybody else to play cornerback primarily. Sure, Cam Miller would rotate in, but in terms of the most snaps, it was those 3. Whereas Penn State in Tom Allen's defense, they can trust an AJ Harris or a Jalen Kimber or a better, more experienced Cam Miller, an Audavian Collins, an Elliott Washington who had an interception today late in the game against the backup quarterback. I understand, but Elliott Washington can make plays on the football as well. And then there's Zion Tracy too. Those guys just needed the experience. They were more than half of them were on the roster a year ago. They added Kimber and Harris, but those 4 other players were on the team. They just needed to, go through a season to get together. So that's a lot about the defense. I want to get back to the offense specifically. I talked a lot about Drew Allar because he is, he is going to be by proxy the biggest takeaway because the Andy Kotelnicki's offense, well, Drew Allar's the quarterback. After Nick Dawkins, he's the next player to get the football. And Allar did everything that you asked him to. Did not turn the football over. Anytime you see, I think he missed one. There was one errant throw, more or less, to Amari Evans behind him. Evans didn't catch it. It was an incompletion. Drew Allar's very selective with his passes. If you think, Drew Allar's just, he just chucked that one away. He's inaccurate. Garrett Green's inaccurate. Everybody saw that game. 53 completion percentage from a season ago. That there's a reason for that. But Drew Allar, when he makes those mistakes and you're like, what was that throw? You're questioning it. Drew Allar is, in a sense, throwing it away. He's making an inaccurate pass to a point where, hey, if my receiver can make a play on this, he can get it. So Drew Allar's going from the mindset of I will put this football where only my receiver can get it. The odds are still low that he does end up catching it, but only my receiver can get to it. I am keeping it away from the linebacker, the defensive back. I think Drew had one or two throws where it was like, okay, the ball was in harm's way. That could have been intercepted, or it was behind Amari Evans, and that was just, hey, inaccuracies happen. He's not perfect, but he's a very good quarterback, and I think he can be the number one overall pick. And then you see that dual threat element of his game. I was not kidding when I said that all on the show for months. Allar's going to run more. You're going to see a different version of Drew Allar where there's going to be read option plays. He's going to run triple option plays where it's a fake to one halfback and then rolls out, and he's either going to keep it or he's going to pitch the football, and he's just going to be tougher to bring down. He already had good pocket mobility, and then losing that weight just allows him to be a little more nimble. You saw it. West Virginia was chasing him. That's a 6'5", 235-pound quarterback, and they were chasing him. He was dancing around and was able to extend the play, allow receivers to break away from coverage. That's what losing 7 pounds can do for you. It adds 3, 4, 5 seconds to an offensive play to generate a completion. And Allar doesn't get rattled when there's pressure in his. I thought he handled it. West Virginia brought pressure, handled it very well. I also want to talk about Bo Pribula in this conversation. So Allar's the one quarterback. Andy Kotelnicki was not afraid to bring his full system over and make that 2-quarterback system. Bo Pribula, I don't think had the best game in the world. Almost had a fumble. His shin ended up being down in the replay, and it was a 50-50. It could have been overturned. It could have, and it would have swung momentum. So fortunate for Penn State that they kept the football there. But that is also a work in progress on its own. How to use those plays timely, how to use them effectively, how to get Bo Pribula in the best situations. And he wasn't utilized a lot last year. So it's one thing to do it in practice and to say that, oh, Bo can do it, but will he be able to do it? That's the offense. I'm surprised they even showed that in this game. And then we talked to Steve to get that insider look. And he's like, you're going to see all of it. I thought it was going to be progressively worked in, okay, so you'll see Drew Allar up front. You'll see some more read option, triple option types of plays, but maybe they'll save the Bo Pribula Wildcat package for later. Andy Kotelnicki basically rolled out a lot of what is going to be the bread and butter of this season. Did he show the entire hand? Did he show the entire playbook? Absolutely not. We got a very limited version, but we got basically a small sample size of everything. We didn't just get one intensive part of the playbook. We got a little bit of everything, but not everything is my point there. So hey, it's a dominant victory when both your quarterbacks throw a touchdown pass, both of your running backs get a touchdown. Nicholas Singleton had the big rushing touchdown, and Katron Allen had the receiving touchdown, and Tyler Warren gets involved. Trey Wallace had 2 touchdowns, right? That's what domination looks like when both of your quarterbacks get a touchdown pass, both your starting running backs get a touchdown in the game, and then you're able to distribute the football to everybody. Going to the running backs, liked what I saw out of Nicholas Singleton. Katron Allen, not the best day for him. 10 carries, 20 yards, but effective in the passing game. Had that... took a simple dump-off pass, took the check down, and took it 20 yards for a touchdown. That's what I meant. The running backs are going to be utilized more in the passing game as well. It wasn't as intense because Penn State didn't need to open up the passing attack. But Penn State was able to again, work with what West Virginia was giving them. And I haven't really brought up West Virginia a lot in this conversation because they really disappointed in this game. Defensively, they were offensively too, but defensively, they went at it from the mindset of we are going to try to shut down the run. And that did not work for the second year in a row. And I understand that. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are guys that you want to emphasize in your game plan. I understand that when you're an opposing defense. But you allowed Drew Allar for the second year in a row to just torture secondary parts. So Penn State was able to capitalize on the mistakes, coaching schematic mistakes of West Virginia as well. Penn State was able to execute, but West Virginia gave them a lot of easy opportunities to move up and down the field with those explosive plays. So that's why I started off the show the way I did, is that Penn State's not exactly in that elite category yet because West Virginia still has a good amount of shortcomings, whereas Penn State is a college football playoff team inside of the top 10 and hopefully closer to that top 4 than the bottom 4 there. I think they host a playoff game. I truly do. But West Virginia, I really don't know that Neil Brown and the rest of that staff are and West Virginia, people who cover West Virginia pivoted pretty quickly on how they felt about this team going into the rest of the season. I don't think you're playing a top 10 team, an elite from the standpoint of they are one of the best in the country. They're in that top 10 conversation. But West Virginia, to totally sell out here, I just think there's kind of levels to it and everything. But Penn State capitalized on what West Virginia couldn't take anything away because of how talented Penn State was and how well coached they were overall. And they just capitalized on the mistakes that West Virginia gave them. Again, selling out for the run and just leaving defensive backs on. They just didn't help them out. They didn't do anything to help that secondary out. And that's why Drew Allar and Trey Wallace and Amari Evans had as much success as they did in the passing game today. So on the wide receivers and the tight ends, Trey Wallace is your clear-cut number one. 5 receptions, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. Amari Evans gave you that big play ability. I think he will absolutely average. I was talking to Dylan from Penn State Rivals. Some of you may remember him as a guest on this show. And I was talking to him the other day, and he said, I don't know if Evans would be a player that would average over 20 yards per catch. And I said, absolutely. Absolutely he would, because he is that home run threat. I look around the wide receiver room, and Trey Wallace is your number one, do everything all around wide receiver. But a Julian Fleming, a Caden Saunders, or a Liam Clifford, guys who were not involved, period. They were on the football field, but they didn't get involved in the game today, and that's fine. You didn't need them to. But they're possession receivers. They're short to medium distance receivers. They can't take a top off the defense. Amari Evans and to an extent Trey Wallace. Trey Wallace can, as you saw today with 2 touchdowns. But Amari Evans is your speed home run threat. If Penn State wants to make this offense from good to great to elite, they need to unlock the potential of Amari Evans. Amari Evans is the X factor. He is the key to taking this offense to a whole nother level. I mean that. That's a lot of responsibility on one player who is in the 3rd year with this program. But that's what Evans can do for you. And he has abilities that not a lot of other players on this offense have. He's one of the 3 fastest players overall on this team. And I think he will absolutely average over 20 plus yards per catch because he is going to be your home run threat. And frankly, at the moment, he's your only one. So Amari Evans is a lot more valuable than people are giving him credit for within this offense. Finish up with the offensive line before we take another break and go to the defense. Penn State's offensive line impressed me, but I've been very critical of West Virginia's front 7. And again, schematically, they blitzed, but they didn't really get home. I mean, Allar was able to dance out of some pressure here and there, but there wasn't a lot. It's not like West Virginia was in Drew Allar's face mask every single play. West Virginia just didn't offer a lot of pressure, and that, again, holds back the secondary because they can only cover for so long. It's a yin and yang. It's consequential, right down the chain of command there. If your front 7 isn't going to be able to do its job, and I don't care that West Virginia led the Big 12 in sacks. West Virginia, when you look at Pro Football Focus's analytics from a season ago, was a bottom 20 group in terms of getting effective pass rushes. So the secondary last season actually would bail out West Virginia's defensive line quite a bit because they would hold coverage, and they did that against, frankly, weaker competition. Cincinnati was a pretty rough team, a UCF, a Baylor, just to kind of name a few. I don't need to get into West Virginia and how they match up with other Big 12 teams. But my point is that the offensive line looked good. I still have my questions about them. I think that there's obviously room for improvement, because they struggled in the ground game a little bit. Again, West Virginia's front 7, other than Nicholas Singleton breaking off that big run, they held Katron Allen in check. It's not like Penn State had this dominant day on the ground. They did well. They did enough to get the job done, but they didn't dominate there. They dominated other places. They didn't dominate there. And the offensive line, I think, needs to establish that. I think they need to get, a little tougher up front initially. And again, West Virginia sold out for the run, so that's understandable. Pass blocking, I think, gets a B plus. I think they did very well. I think they shattered expectations there, but part of that has to do with the matchup. West Virginia's defensive line is not that good when it comes to getting after the quarterback, and the analytics back that up. And you saw it. They did not pass they passed the eye test in that category of, the numbers don't lie, and you saw it today as well. So I need a tougher test for the offensive line. And you're not going to get that for some time. It's not going to be there against a Bowling Green, a Kent State, probably not in Illinois either. Illinois lost a lot from its front seven. We'll see as we dive deeper into Illinois when that game rolls around. But I don't and then there's UCLA. I don't know if Penn State's offensive line is really going to get that true barometer litmus test where until it's USC. And that's not the game that you want, because that's your turning point in the season. That's the beginning of the heart of your schedule. So we'll see. Offensive line did its job today. Very impressed for what it's worth, but I need a tougher test for them to be more confident. So as promised, we'll pivot to the defense. Defense looks top 10 caliber again. Tom Allen's energy is infectious. You could see it, but they played a little undisciplined at times. Let's discuss that on the other side of this break. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Are you tired after lunch? Well, you're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit a wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar, a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. And the 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore. You have watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There is truly a flavor for everyone, and you can try them all. You go to the website, you have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get a 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. And this code is also not good on subscription orders. But again, that is code LOCKEDONCFB. LOCKEDONCFB, and you receive 20% off your order. So go to 5hourenergy.com today. We'll finish things up with the defense and just kind of, look ahead and everything. But I want to get back to the comments section. I appreciate each and all of you being a part of the discussion. See tons of comments, and forgive me if I don't get to your comments specifically, but of course I'm going in order here of people that submitted their thoughts first in this case. Steven says the it factor for Drew, meaning that yes, no, he has a. You needed more confidence, and you got more confidence out of Drew today. I mean, some of the passes Drew made were amazing. Literally, yep, he makes really elite throws, NFL caliber type of throws. But the ones where you think that what was he doing there? He looks completely inaccurate. Don't read into those too much. That shows to me that Drew Allar is more accurate than people are giving him credit for. Again, he's putting the football out of harm's way where the defensive back, where the guy in coverage cannot get it. Only his target. What happened to Fleming? Was he even targeted? For those bigger games, we need all hands on deck. Anthony, thank you for the comment. So Julian Fleming did not register a catch. He was kind of rotating in. He was in the slot a bit, but Julian Fleming. And if anybody else watched some of the previous episodes that I did leading up through the preseason and training camp, is that the expectation shouldn't be overwhelming for Julian Fleming. He was not brought in to be the clear-cut number one wide receiver. He was going to not be fringe either. Julian Fleming's a really good blocker. He's a really good leader of men, of football players, and that's what Fleming was brought in more so for his character, for his leadership, his discipline, rather than his contributions on the field. His contributions on the football field are going to be nice and needed at some point in time. But to think that, okay, hey, he's going to have a 10 catch, 100-yard game or this breakout performance, it's going to be, I think the ceiling for Fleming at times will be, five catches, 60 yards and a touchdown. Maybe he has a 2-touchdown game. And then again, that's depending on availability. He is not the first option at wide receiver. It's Trey Wallace, it's Amari Evans, it's Liam Clifford, and then Caden Saunders rotates in with Liam Clifford. And then I would say it's Julian Fleming. He's in this group of 5. And I would say, and then there's Tyler Warren, right? So he's not exactly that first option or the second or the third. And it's kind of debatable if he's even the 4th. So I hope people understand my point here. But when you have Julian Fleming on the football field, he helps you out in your ground game significantly. He's an elite run blocker when it comes to being a wide receiver. Wallace was good. He was great. He was phenomenal. Penn State's depth is impressive, which is good for a potential college football playoff run. It's quarterback room, running back room, I think wide receiver, right? I don't want to get into speaking hypotheticals here with who's available and who's not, but wide receiver has my concerns as far as depth goes. Often they actually have a lot of offensive linemen. I'm not concerned about the depth at offensive linemen. It's just finding the right starting 5 to gel together. Defensive line is a very deep group. Linebacker, kind of the same thing at wide receiver. You really have about 4 or 5 players that you can trust right now. And then the rest of them that you don't know that you want them in a football game right now. Cornerbacks, safeties, different story. I've already talked about that, but that's where my biggest concerns about depth are wide receiver and linebacker. Robert says we aren't losing to USC. A lot can change between now. I mean, again, Penn State's a 7-point favorite, but a 6-hour plane ride in the middle of the season, right? It's not like it's for the Rose Bowl where you get a month to prepare, and that's a brand new opponent. They got a new defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn, former Penn State player, and he's really good. UCLA had one of the best defenses in the country last season because of D'Anton Lynn, and he moves over. You didn't have far to move and went to USC. Robert added, I don't know. I know we don't play Indiana, Illinois. So we do play, Penn State does play Illinois this season, but the schedule is not that hard. That's interesting to me because the analytics say otherwise. I get it. Penn State has the favorable schedule. Do they? Do they really? Because again, it's a trip to Southern. USC isn't going to Happy Valley. Penn State's going out there. That's a 6-hour plane ride one way. And then go to Camp Randall. Whatever you think about Wisconsin, that's a hostile environment as the weather gets colder. And they got a top 10 defense. Wisconsin does. Offense is a big question mark, but they have a top 10 defense. Then you got a top 3 team in Ohio State. My pick to win the college football championship. My pick to win it all this season is Ohio State. Ohio State, and then probably an improved Washington team, even though they're in a rebuild. That's a tough 4-game stretch. I don't like when people say that Penn State's schedule is easy or Penn State happens to be rated better than 11 of those teams. Ohio State's the only one. That's still a gauntlet to go through in the middle of the season there. We have a lot better speed and strength than USC. They are more on the level with West Virginia. Again, it depends. They're going through, like Penn State's trying to rebuild its offense and get to the same place. USC doesn't have that problem on offense. Defensively, Penn State's offense, if Penn State's offense is ahead of USC's defense from where they are developing under these new systems, D'Anton Lynn's a heck of a coach defensively. He is one of the top defensive coordinators in the nation. Andy Kotelnicki's the same way on offense. So I'm really looking forward to that battle in time. Thank you, Kevin. I agree with me too. Kevin also added, I think Tom Allen should get a lot of credit as well. Love Manny Diaz literally, but the defense didn't miss a beat in my opinion. So let's go to that to finish up the live show. Again, I forgive me if I could not get to everybody's comments, but got to keep with the content schedule here to wrap up the live show. As far as the defense was going a million miles an hour. What stood out to me specifically is the fact that guys like a Jalen Reed or a Zane Durant. Like there were other names that had really good performances. KJ Winston is an absolute beast. He's a future first round NFL draft pick, and you're getting insane value. You're getting a steal if he somehow falls to the second round, but he's not getting drafted any later than the second round. He is going to leave after this season with the talent that he has. But 12 tackles for a safety, again, that has to do double duty of handling the run, but also being in coverage as well. And KJ Winston had 12 tackles. Jalen Reed was flying all over the football field. He was everywhere, and it's no wonder that Penn State was thinking about and is more or less running that 4-2-5 defensive system because they have so much talent at those safety spots between Winston and Reed and Wheatley. But I did not realize how much of a jump that Reed would take, and you already saw it on full display against West Virginia today. But a player like a Zane Durant or Tony Rojas flashed potential that everybody's been waiting for, that everybody's been expecting from them. And Zane Durant's going into year 3, but I thought he just reset the line of scrimmage there in the middle. It's the fact that Penn State's defense is not just focused to Abdul Carter and KJ Winston, and now it's not, and maybe a little bit of a denied Dennis Sutton, right? You have your main 3 players that first come to mind because of what the future NFL pedigree that it holds. But now you have to account for Jalen Reed. Now you have to account for the playmaking ability of Tony Rojas, a Zane Durant, a Devon J. Thomas, right? It's not just all clustered to Abdul Carter's there to make the big play. It's all on him, and it's not. Penn State's defense up and down. A.J. Harris, right? Jalen Kimber, I thought, had a really good day. And you're not going to hear me talk about everybody's performance because a lot of players did have good performances. I mean, West Virginia was held to 12 points. Garrett Green was 15 of 28. Barely completed over 50% of his passes, go figure. But a West Virginia offense where its bread and butter is the ground game. And this team had 37 yards for 37 carries, pardon me, for 85 yards with an average of 2.3 yards per carry. Penn State a year ago had the number 1 rushing defense in terms of yards per carry. They allowed 2.2. And West Virginia got its yards on the ground a season ago. 1 year ago, they were pretty effective. But to go into Morgantown with the same quarterback, the same 2 running backs that were the 1-2 punch between Donaldson and White, a true thunder and lightning. We say that about Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, but more or less they're all around all-purpose backs. They can do everything. Nicholas Singleton can run through you. He can run to the outside, right? He's a power and a speed back, but we call them thunder and lightning because Allen's a traditional power back and Singleton is faster. He's very, very much so faster. But Donaldson is truly run up the middle, be physical, and then change of pace. The speedy guy, Jaheim White, who I think is all of 5'8", 180 pounds, if that. Like he might be drafted by the Miami Dolphins in the future just simply because of the way he's built. But that is a true thunder and lightning, and Penn State did not budge. They did not flinch and held a West Virginia team to 85 yards where they like to run the football again, and then run it some more. And Garrett Green, the guy who also had 750 rushing yards a season ago, all 3 of those guys that I mentioned, White, Donaldson, and Green, each had at least 750 yards from a season ago, and Garrett Green had 10 carries for 5 yards. Completely ineffective. Penn State, against a more experienced, a gelled West Virginia offense, had a better game than compared to last season, and it was in Morgantown. This was an improved, this at least had the consistency. West Virginia's offense was consistent, aside from the fact of the center, snapping the football every which direction. Like, whoa, Zach Frazier for them really was insanely valuable for them. But my point is that West Virginia returned a bulk of its team, and Penn State performed so much better. West Virginia had everything going for them in this season, and that's why I said, hey, I know what I think Penn State. I'm confident. I would put every bit of stock that they win this game. I would never think that West Virginia is going to make it an upset. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if West Virginia happens to pull within, a score or so late in the game and keeps this at least interesting and, underneath the 5 minutes, right? Penn State's clearly in front. They have a 2-score lead, but West Virginia gets a garbage time point because Penn State wore West Virginia down. Penn State wore West Virginia down and beat them at their own game. And defensively, that is where they defensively they were smothering. They were everywhere. They were flying to the football. They were making big hits. And West Virginia got punched in the mouth and didn't know exactly how to respond. And this was in front of their home crowd. And they had all the confidence in the world going into this season that they're going to win the Big 12 and that they have a potential to be a Cinderella team and make the college football playoff. And they were humbled today. And a big reason for that was the Penn State defense that it's not just condensed to one or two or three players. Abdul Carter, KJ Winston, no. You have to now account for Tony Rojas, Zane Durant, Denai Dennis Sutton, in addition to an Abdul Carter and a KJ Winston, that there's not a large gap between. No, do I think Abdul Carter and KJ Winston are much better than some of these players right now overall? Absolutely. But I'm saying okay, if you're going to try to double team Abdul Carter, good luck going one-on-one against Zane Durant. One-on-one with Denai Dennis Sutton. One-on-one with Tony Rojas. One-on-one with Kobe King. Oh, you're gonna try to attack a specific corner and say go up against Jalen Kimber. Well, now you got to account for KJ Winston in coverage, or Jalen Reed, or Zach Wheatley, or AJ Harris, who can all make plays on the football. And that's my point. It's not just isolated to a couple select players. All of these guys are playmakers. They're not liabilities. And I think they can get even better. I think the best is still yet. Obviously, the best is still yet for a Tony Rojas. This was only his first game starting, and he had a phenomenal performance. I think Zane Durant, that coming out party was long overdue for Zane Durant, because the initial talk when he enrolled early as a freshman was that this guy's going to be a playmaker early on, kind of, quiet for the most part, given the expectations. But now Zane Durant is there. And that's exciting, because you need that to compete with the Georgias, the Ohio States, Texases, even though right? But that's the conversation. That's the conversation. If you want to compete with those kinds of teams, you need to be that diverse and have so many different star playmakers that can step up when they do focus on an Abdul Carter, or how can we take away KJ Winston, or how can we take away Kobe King. Now you got to account for Tony Rojas. Now you got to account for Zane Durant. Now you got to account for Jalen Reed. It's not just taking away one or two players, and that's the best teams that can do that. But it becomes the best teams can do that, but it becomes more difficult against Penn State now. 12 points against West Virginia on the road. Somehow this game, because Penn State is more improved, and the final point of it all is it's all connected to one another. The reason Penn State's defense was able to perform better and look better, it's the same talent. Abdul Carter was on the team a season ago. Zane Durant was on the team a season ago. Devon J. Thomas, Denai Dennis Sutton, Kobe King, Tony Rojas. All of those guys have another year of experience under their belt. They're bigger, faster, stronger, smarter. I get that. But the offense, I've said this dozens of times, the offense never bailed out the defense. They were a liability. So now when you're that's a lot of mindset. So you have Tom Allen as the defensive coordinator, who is a genius in his own right, with, like Manny Diaz, and he was aggressive and knows what works and what doesn't, and has a lot of playmakers to do all those great things with. But an offense that just, didn't inspire a lot of momentum. Okay, we're just going to play ball control right out of the gate. Penn State had 3 explosive plays in the first half compared to, how many did they have a season ago? 10 in total? They averaged under 1 explosive play per game, and that was based on luck. It wasn't because they were creating that. But now you have that. So an offense that can go out and score at will. They scored in under 22 seconds to give Penn State. Penn State gave themselves a 2-touchdown advantage by scoring in under 22 seconds after a botched 4th down call. Remember that? CJ Donaldson did not have the first, but they still gave West Virginia the first. And Penn State turns around offensively and scores a touchdown, not even a field goal, a touchdown in 22 seconds. It's those kinds of things that the defense is looking like, hey, we got some cushion. We can do a lot of different things now rather than kind of protecting a 3 to 7 point lead. We have some cushion where we can go and make plays and get risky on defense, those kinds of things, right? It all kind of evens itself out. The offense is able to complement the defense and then vice versa. The defense allows the offense, short fields by creating turnovers, getting the football back to them quickly, and then the offense can sustain a drive, or if they need to, go score in a couple plays and really build some momentum. And now you have that. The only thing I will watch, because I mentioned it, is that discipline. Abdul Carter jumping off sides, denied Dennis Sutton jumping off sides, right? A couple egregious hits out of bounds, late hits and stuff. I will say Penn State in the secondary did get away with a couple holds here and there. I think there was one overthrow by Garrett Green. I think it was Elliott Washington who was in coverage. A little bit of a jersey tug. Just something to keep an eye on. The refs didn't call it today, but that's not to say they won't call it against USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State. Just be careful. You can get away with some of those mistakes today, but maybe not tomorrow. Just a couple. Penn State won 34-12. I don't want to hear West Virginia making excuses. Oh, well, the ref missed this call, the ref missed that call. That's one or two plays. I'm just saying, I think Penn State's defense was aggressive, but I think at times they were a little over aggressive, and fortunately, it didn't cost them anything. Wow, it was a long live, but that's okay. I enjoy talking Penn State football, and there was quite a bit to talk about today because of the performance. This is a good indicator of where Penn State is. They still need to prove it against Ohio State. Okay, you can't measure the success of this team against the likes of West Virginia. There's still a clear gap between what West Virginia is and what it's trying to do versus what Penn State is and what Penn State is trying to do. Penn State's trying to win a national championship. West Virginia is trying to go on some sort of Cinderella run, and there's a clear distance between coaching, overall talent, execution, and when it was on full display today, 34-12 the final. Penn State is 1-0. They'll then pivot to Bowling Green, Kent State, and then back into Big Ten play, opening up at home, surprisingly enough. They never open Big Ten play at home, against Illinois later on in September. I thank each and every one of you for checking out this episode, being a part of the conversation. Forgive me if I did not get to your comment, but there were so many of you, and we will do more of these live post-game recaps in the future, of course. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it if you left a like on this live episode. I'm grateful for your comments, and we're going to be talking more about Penn State football throughout the week, as this is your podcast daily centered around your favorite Penn State Nittany Lions sports teams. My name is Zach Seyko, and we'll be talking more about Penn State football and the other Penn State sports all throughout the season. Thanks for tuning in.